I never thought a door could feel like a punch in the chest. Yet here I was, standing on the sun-bleached porch of the beach house my sister once called perfect for her wedding, rattling a knob that wouldn't turn. The late summer breeze carried the tang of salt and the faraway crash of waves, sounds I used to find soothing. Now they only sharpened the hollow thud in my ribs. I pressed my palm against the weathered cedar door, the same door we painted a pale robin's egg blue one giddy weekend years ago. It didn't budge. The new brass deadbolt glinted back at me, catching the morning light like a sly wink. My phone buzzed against my silk blouse, soft as a sigh, though I felt anything but soft. A text from my cousin Madison blinked across the screen. Saw the wedding pics you posted. Gorgeous venue. Can't wait for Saturday. My stomach tightened. Saturday. 3 days from now. I drew a slow breath, tasting brine and the faint bitterness of last night's coffee. My reflection in the porch window stared back, hair pinned in the practical bun I wore to board meetings, a face calm and composed, the practiced mask of a woman who learned long ago how to keep certain truths hidden. 3 years of silence between my sister and me, and this was how she chose to break it, by changing the locks on the house we once dreamed of sharing. I pressed the phone to my chest, steadying the sting behind my eyes. Fine, I thought. If this is how Lauren wants to play it, she's about to learn who really owns the story. 3 years earlier, the same house smelled of lemon polish and coconut sunscreen. Lauren and I were sprawled on the sunroom rug, our legs stretched toward the glass doors where the tide shimmered like crushed diamonds. Back then, we still called each other Lo and Lainey, childhood nicknames that clung to us like sea salt. You're wasting your time, she'd said, flipping through a bridal magazine with the casual cruelty only sisters can deliver. Freelance design? It's basically glorified scrapbooking. I swallowed, pretending to adjust the sketchpad balanced on my knees. My pencil hovered midline as my heart skipped, then thudded hard. It's not scrapbooking, I managed. I'm building a portfolio. Clients like my work. Lauren snorted. Clients? Who? Your college roommate? Face it, Lainey, you need a real job. Mom and Dad think so too. The words landed like a slap, even though she said them lightly. I felt the back of my throat tighten, my palms damp against the paper. Outside, a gull screeched, a harsh punctuation to my silence. I wanted to argue, to tell her about the cafe owner downtown who'd hired me to design a full rebrand, about the late nights sketching until my fingers ached. But her smirk told me it wouldn't matter. Our grandmother, Evelyn, patted and then, her silver hair caught in a scarf the color of sea foam. She carried a single conch shell, its rose-tinted spiral gleaming. Girls, she said gently, kneeling beside me. She pressed the shell into my hands. Do you know what this is? A shell? I asked, confused. It's what the ocean gives back, she said. The tide always returns what belongs to you, no matter how far it travels. Her gaze lingered on me, warm and certain. Don't let anyone decide what's yours. Lauren rolled her eyes and turned another page. But something in my grandmother's voice settled into me like a seed. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I packed my sketch pads, laptop, and the conch shell into a canvas tote. My hands trembled, but there was a steadiness underneath, a quiet current pulling me forward. I drove away before sunrise, the pink shell resting on the passenger seat like a silent promise. As the first streaks of dawn broke across the water, I whispered to myself, I'll make something they can't dismiss. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew I'd never let that house, or my sister's careless words, define my worth again. The first months away from the coast were nothing like the glossy dream I'd whispered to that pink conch shell. I rented a tiny studio in Portland, an attic with slanted ceilings and a single skylight that leaked when it rained. The place smelled faintly of old cedar and someone else's coffee grounds, but it was mine. By day, I juggled temp work, answering phones for a dentist, filing invoices at a shipping company. By night, I worked until the city went quiet, the hum of my ancient space heater keeping time with the scratch of my pencil. There were nights I thought about quitting. When my fingertips ached from tracing digital mock-ups, when rejection emails stacked like bricks in my inbox, I'd hold the conch shell to my ear. The ocean's hush, real or imagined, reminded me of Grandma Evelyn's words, "The tide always returns what belongs to you." It was during one of those long nights at a coffee house, chipped nail polish wrapped around a too-hot mug, that I met Meredith Blake. She was an art director for a mid-sized branding agency, a woman whose gray-streaked hair and perfectly tailored blazer gave her an effortless authority. She leaned over my table to ask if the seat was free, then glanced at the sketches scattered like petals around my laptop. "These yours?" she'd asked, eyebrows lifting. "Yes," I said, my voice smaller than I liked. Meredith smiled. "You've got an eye. Ever thought of pitching to bigger clients?" I almost laughed. Bigger clients? I barely had rent money. But she pressed her card into my palm. "Call me. Talent like that shouldn't stay hidden." Working under Meredith was a revelation. She didn't coddle, she challenged. When my first major pitch nearly collapsed under a client's last-minute changes, she stayed late with me, our sleeves rolled, coffee cups breeding on the table. "Don't shrink to fit their panic," she said once, tapping my sketch with a red pencil. "Expand. Make them chase your vision." Those words settled next to Grandma's Tide promise, and together they became a kind of creed. Slowly, the small victories began to stack. My first national campaign, a quirky coffee brand that went viral, my first six-figure contract. The day I signed a lease for my own boutique design studio. I posted polite updates on social media, an occasional photo of my desk bathed in late afternoon light, a vague caption about new projects. Lauren never asked for details, and I offered none. When Meredith eventually announced her retirement and named me creative director, I celebrated quietly with a single flute of champagne, the conch shell gleaming on the bookshelf above my desk. A year later, when a historic beach house came up for sale, the same one where Lauren and I had once argued, I wired the down payment before the listing even hit the wider market. I told no one. Each time I unlocked that robin's egg blue door, the salty wind carried a whisper of homecoming. Not the kind my sister would recognize, but the kind I had earned. Every late night, every rejection, every hard-won yes etched into the walls like my own private signature. The house was mine. Entirely, irrevocably mine. And I intended to keep it that way, until Lauren's wedding invitation arrived like a tide surge I hadn't seen coming. By the time Saturday morning arrived, the sky above the shore was streaked in pale peach, the kind of watercolor dawn that usually softened everything it touched. But not today. Today the air felt charged, every gull cry a warning. I parked my black crossover behind a line of catering vans and bridal party SUVs. Through the front windows, I caught a quick glimpse of champagne flutes on white-draped tables, the flicker of string lights coiled like golden vines. Lauren had always been good at spectacle. I slipped inside without announcement, the soft click of my heels drowned by the swell of waves beyond the deck. The familiar scent of cedar and sea salt wrapped around me, and for an instant I was 20 again, sketchpad in hand, trying not to cry. Then I saw her. Lauren stood at the far end of the great room, her ivory satin gown spilling like a tide pool across the polished wood. She was laughing at something the photographer said, her veil glinting as she turned, and then her eyes caught mine. Her smile faltered. "Lainey," she said, the childhood nickname slipping out before she straightened. "What are you? How did you?" "I used the key," I said evenly, holding up the brass ring that still fit my palm as perfectly as the day I'd signed the deed. A ripple of confusion passed through the bridal party. The photographer lowered his camera. Lauren's cheeks flushed a sharp pink. I changed the locks. The realtor gave me access." "The realtor?" I stepped closer, my voice low but carrying. "Lauren, this isn't a rental property. It's my house." The room went still. Her fiancé, a tall man with carefully combed hair and the kind of expensive watch that screams investment banker, frowned. "Wait, your house?" "Yes," I said, letting the single syllable settle like a stone in water. "I bought it 3 years ago. Paid in full." Lauren blinked, as if I'd spoken a foreign language. You? You don't, you couldn't have. Afford it. I finished for her. That's what you were going to say, right? Her mouth opened, closed. Behind her, Aunt Mary Ann clutched her pearls with theatrical flair. But we all thought that I was still scraping by. I said gently, not cruelly. That's what you were supposed to think. I drew a breath, the salt air filling me like quiet thunder. I'm creative director at Blake and Company now. National campaigns, six-figure contracts. And when this house went on the market, I made sure it came home to me. Lauren's fiancé cleared his throat, shifting uncomfortably. Someone in the bridal party muttered a soft wow. For a long beat, only the rhythm of the ocean filled the silence. Finally, Lauren spoke, her voice thinner than I remembered. Why didn't you tell us? I studied her, the sister who once dismissed my dreams as scrapbooking. She looked suddenly small inside the cathedral of windows and light. Because I needed to build something without your permission, I said. Without anyone's. A single tear traced the edge of her makeup, leaving a faint shimmer like sea spray. I just wanted, she faltered. I wanted the house for the wedding. It felt right. It is right, I said softly. But it's not yours to take. I let the words linger, neither harsh nor forgiving, simply true. And in the hush that followed, the tide rolled in, steady and unbothered, as if it had been waiting for this reckoning all along. The room still trembled with quiet disbelief, but now the air had changed. I felt it, the subtle shift that comes when the balance tilts and you realize the weight is finally in your hands. For the first time in years, I wasn't the little sister waiting for permission. I was the one who decided. I let my gaze sweep over the assembled wedding party. Lauren, still in her satin gown, cheeks flushed, eyes wide. Her fiancé, uncomfortable in his polished shoes. Aunt Mary and clutching pearls like a lifeline, and the rest of the bridesmaids, frozen mid-whisper. I'll let the wedding happen here, I said, my voice steady, carrying over the soft hum of the waves outside. But there are conditions. Lauren's brow furrowed. Conditions? Yes, I said, stepping closer, letting the tide of authority I'd carried silently for years settle around me. First, Lauren, you will acknowledge my ownership publicly, both to your guests and your family. No more hiding behind assumptions or entitlement. Her lips parted, as though forming a protest, but I raised a hand. Second, you will respect the house. That means no last-minute decorations that damage anything, no surprise contractors, and no more taking what isn't yours. Her fiancé shifted, clearing his throat. Of course. Third, I continued, looking at everyone in the room. Anyone who has doubted me in the past, who has dismissed my work, belittled my choices, or refused to respect my boundaries, will take a step toward change. That means personal growth, honesty in relationships, and accountability for your actions. Aunt Mary Ann gasped faintly. Lainey, you're being harsh. No, I said, softening slightly. I'm being fair. I care about you all. But care doesn't mean ignoring the truth. It doesn't mean letting old patterns repeat. Lauren's gaze softened, the edges of panic giving way to something tentative, like recognition. I guess I didn't realize. Then realize now, I said, smiling gently. This house, these choices, they are a reflection of my work, my effort, my life. You want a place in it? You follow the rules. You respect me. You grow. There was a pause, long and quiet, as if the ocean itself had drifted inside the house to underscore the gravity of my words. Finally, Lauren's fiancé nodded. I can do that. We'll do that. Aunt Mary Ann exhaled slowly, tension leaving her shoulders. The bridesmaids murmured assent. I let the wave of authority pass through me, feeling it both settle and expand, calm, yet unstoppable. And I added, letting a softer note weave through the firmness. Remember the tide, the shell, the lesson. What belongs to you will return, but only if you've earned it, only if you've respected it, and only if you've been honest along the way. Lauren swallowed, nodding slowly, the first signs of humility softening the sharp edges of entitlement I'd seen for years. I realized then that my power wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about rubbing their noses in my success. It was about creating space for truth, growth, and boundaries. And in that space, we could all begin again, on terms that honored effort, respect, and resilience. The tide outside rolled in, unbothered, steady, and eternal, and for the first time that morning, I felt the same steady current inside me. By sunset, the beach house had transformed from a battleground into a place of quiet understanding. Lauren moved with careful grace among the tables, her laughter lighter, her apologies whispered not just to me but to the wind, as if carrying away years of unspoken tension. Her fiancé lingered close, following directions with a kind of thoughtful diligence that spoke more about character than obligation. Aunt Marianne, pearls loosened around her neck, found me on the veranda overlooking the tide. "Lainey, I didn't realize," she said softly, eyes glistening. "I'm proud of you." I nodded, letting her words settle without the need for excessive gratitude. This wasn't about praise. It was about truth and respect finally acknowledged. Later, I retreated to the small sunroom I had kept intact, the one filled with the subtle scent of cedar and the faint salt tang of the sea. The pink conch shell from Grandma Evelyn gleamed in the golden light streaming through the window. I held it in my hand, tracing the spiral, remembering her voice. "The tide always returns what belongs to you." And it had. I realized that what I had built, this house, my career, the quiet strength I carried, wasn't just for me. It was a reminder to anyone who had ever doubted themselves that boundaries, perseverance, and self-belief mattered more than fleeting validation. Lauren appeared at the doorway, her expression softer now, her hands empty, but her heart apparently heavy with reflection. "Thank you," she whispered. "Not for the house. Not for the concessions. But for teaching her the lesson she'd refused to learn herself." I smiled, a small, confident curl of lips that held both forgiveness and quiet triumph. "You're welcome," I said. "Now make sure your tide comes back to you too, but on your own terms." The sky bled pink into lavender, the ocean rippling like liquid glass. The wind carried a faint, familiar hush of salt and promise, a quiet affirmation of what I had endured and what I had become. I placed the shell back on the shelf, letting it shine as a reminder of resilience, patience, and self-respect. Standing there, I realized that the woman who once trembled with doubt had been replaced by someone who knew her own worth, someone unafraid to claim it. And in that still, sacred moment, I whispered, not to anyone, not to the tide, but to myself, "This is mine. Always has been, always will be."